What are walls used for? Is it really to keep people out or to keep people in? Find out more on an exciting episode of The Right Stuff. Stay tuned. You are listening to the best, the only place to be on Tuesday night. That's right. You're listening to The Right Stuff, and you're at the right place at the right time. From England to Canada, from Detroit to the Poconos, we are showcasing Christian authors worldwide, giving you tips, tools, techniques, and resources for you, the writer, to hone and perfect your craft. Tune in every Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, right here on WPJC 104.5. And your host, Parker J. Cole. Hi, and welcome to the show. I am so glad you are able to join me today as we have another exciting edition of The Right Stuff. Thank you all so much for your support with The Right Stuff these last 3 years. You know what my journey has been, and you know where my journey is going. I'm so glad you are here with me for another exciting Tuesday night with your girl, the queen of Tuesday nights, Parker J. Again, we're going to be talking about a book called When the Watcher Shakes. And we often use walls to keep people out of our space, out of our homes, out of our domains. But what if walls were really meant to keep people in? And even more sinisterly, what if those walls were meant to hide something? We'll be talking about that and more with our guest co-host and contributor coming up next in just a few moments. As always, I want to thank you for your support of my book, The Sins of the Flesh series. The complete series is out now. The latest book in that series is called Vengeful Vows. You can get a copy of that at my publisher's site, Alexio Publishing. You can also get a copy at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, or wherever books are sold. I've been getting really great reviews, and thank you all so much for your reviews. And if you want to get the first part of that trilogy, pick up Many Strange Women today, also at AlexiaPublishing.com. And then, of course, if you haven't read the second book, The Other Man, get a copy of that as well at AlexiaPublishing.com. If you want to weigh in on our topic, you certainly can. Call in at 646-668-8485 and then press 1 to be live on air. Or hit me on Twitter at ParkerJCole, #RightStuff with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guests on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Engaging the culture's imagination through speculative fiction, the Untold Podcast produces audio fiction from a Christian worldview. Find us over at untoldpodcast.com, where we partner with authors to tell science fiction, fantasy, supernatural, and horror stories. Find links at untoldpodcast.com to subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, and a variety of other platforms. Each month we produce high-quality audio fiction that's free to download and free to listen. Our submissions are open, and we're always looking to add another great story to over 24 hours of narrative entertainment. Find all of our audio fiction over at www.untoldpodcast.com.
Question: if you write a book, everybody will rush out to buy it. Obvious answer: no. If you were a celebrity or if you had a huge marketing budget, then maybe you can get a lot of exposure for your book. Another solution would be to check out joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com is a promotion and marketing service with access to over 1/3 of a million followers on Twitter. joeytweets.com has 3 packages available to fit any budget. That's joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com. Get some serious exposure for your books.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff. Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J., here on The Right Stuff, part of the PJC Media Online Broadcasting Company, and I'm so glad you are here with me as we talk about the new book, When the Watcher Shakes. And I'm really excited about this interview because I met Tim a while ago online. He reached out to me and just wanted to know if I was interested in speculative fiction. And I remember thinking, you have come to the right place. One thing that Parker J. does with our show is we always highlight Christian spec fiction authors. And so I'm so glad to introduce to some and present to others Timothy Huguenin. Timothy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fine, Timothy, and I want to say thank you for being with me on the show. I never take it lightly to have our guests with us, so thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure.
You know, Timothy, I can always read a bio, and I used to do that a lot. I used to read a bio when I first started, but I've come to find out that the best person to tell us about themselves is the person who I'm talking to. So go ahead and tell us in your own words who you are.
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up in West Virginia. My parents moved there. My dad was a pastor there at a little small town church, and my family were all readers, all of us, me and my sisters. And I really grew up mostly, didn't have much to do except for read books and play outside. And I did get into video games and a little bit of computer programming for a while, but I've always been a big reader. And even when I was a little kid, I would like to write little short stories and stuff. And so that's kind of my background as far as being a kid and where I grew up, and that influences a lot of. I don't live in West Virginia anymore, but it's a very great sense of place, and I like that a lot, and try to put that in my fiction that I'm writing. I try to set a lot of it in West Virginia. And
what I like about, West Virginia, a lot of people have strange thoughts about West Virginia. You hear a lot of stereotypes about that. But, I've talked to several people on this show who have lived in West Virginia, and they do not by any way, shape, or form meet the stereotypes that come from, TVs and stuff like that about West Virginia. In fact, I remember talking to a guest who had our show a while back, Debbie Richard, and she wrote a memoir about, living in West Virginia, and she said,
cool.
I don't have those type of, she said, my family doesn't act like the Beverly Hillbillies, she said, they doesn't act like that. So, people here in West Virginia, they automatically have a certain connotation. And so I wanted to know, living in West Virginia, go ahead, tell us a little bit about it. Strip back the stereotypes and tell us what it's really like being a West Virginian. Sure.
Well, I want to say one thing. Stereotypes are always there for some reasons, and I'm not going to say that they're, it's not always off base, but usually it's definitely exaggerated, and West Virginia is much more complex in the people there, and really what really strikes me, especially having moved away from there, is how loyal the people there, and how much there's a sense of place there that, myself even, I'm much more loyal to West Virginia as being part of my home even more than I am of like the United States. I mean, it's that high, even higher than, and how much I love it, and the people there are all great. And it's really, like you said, there's stereotypes, but there's really all sorts. And it is, it's funny because it's one of the most homogenous states in terms of like ethnic diversity, but it's also very complex and diverse in the culture there too. So it's an interesting. It's kind of weird, but there's definitely some hillbillies, and I've got a little bit of that in me. But yeah, we're not stupid. We're not all uneducated and dicks and everything. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing I like to do on this show is tear down those stereotypes. That's one of the rewarding things I get with talking to so many different authors, is that, hey, you break the mold when you do that. And so I wanted to just make sure our listeners know out there, that you're a storyteller. You're a storyteller, and you use your place of birth to tell those stories. So tell me, in your own words, what is it about storytelling that you love? Well, part of it is just, I don't know how to explain all of why I love it so much. There's part of it is just like, I guess it's kind of built into me. But, when you really think about stories, we interpret the world kind of through stories, and we can experience dangers or other problems that we might not otherwise encounter in our own lives through reading, books, fiction, nonfiction, things like that. So it helps us, I think, and broaden our minds a lot when we encounter new and different stories. And also, people can use story to, like, kind of teach or influence people with a certain kind of truth, even not even like by hitting them over the head with it, but kind of like underneath, and like Jesus with his parables and things. And I'm not saying that every story needs to be like that or should be, but that's another aspect that I found interesting about stories, that it really influenced people without even, not even always them knowing it, I think. But But otherwise, I mean, I just like stories. I mean, I could think of all these different like explanations, but it just comes down to I like it.
You know, storytelling is a universal language, and storytelling always just bridges the gap between people, because nothing gets anyone going like a good story, especially if you, I remember, you know, sometimes you're at this grocery store and you can hear two people talking and they're saying, well, you know what happened the other day? I was taking Janice to this, you know, and you kind of start listening because they're telling a story, you know, and then they say you're eavesdropping, and then you hopefully they don't turn and see you eavesdropping on their story. But the story really is storytelling really is a great universal language of people. And you kind of mentioned it when I asked you to tell us a little about yourself, but you can kind of expand here. Were you always a storyteller? You know, was that story always in you? Did someone help hone that gift? Tell us about it.
Well, like I said, I think a huge influence on me were my parents, and how they kind of were always reading books whenever I saw them, and how, you know, my mom always brought me to the library and, you know, would get like this huge bag full of books that I couldn't carry home, and and I think having read all that really sparked something in me, but to want to make that myself. Actually, when I was in second grade, and I had forgotten about this, my dad, when we moved away from West Virginia, my dad was going through stuff in his office, and he pulled out this a bunch of sheets of paper that were stapled together and handed it to me, and it was this story that I'd written in second grade for him called Tom and the One-Eyed Dragon. It had like terrible pictures and you know, really funny. I wish I have it. I actually scanned it and saved it on my computer as a PDF, but I don't have it pulled up right now. But it's pretty amusing to go back and see that. Even when I was a little kid trying to write stuff, and I actually tried to. I remember trying to write a book called The Land of the Robots, which is basically a ripoff of Narnia, but with robots in it. You know, these kids. You know, instead of going to a wardrobe, these kids go up into an attic to play, and they end up in this land filled with robots, and I got about 5 pages into it and kind of stopped. But I don't know. I don't remember how old I was then, but my parents were pretty impressed. They had written 5 pages on a computer. So, but thankfully that is long gone and will never see the light of day.
He says that some things are meant to stay in the eons of time, right? Yeah. They're meant to be myth and legend. You know, there was a story. We never knew who wrote it. One of those types of things. Yeah. I love how you brought imagery about how you go to the bookstore and to the library, because it brings my, you know, a common thing that we have is that when my sisters and I were younger, we always went to the library, and we would get milk crates, and we would just like digging all the books, you know. We were digging all the books, have all these different books. So books and readings was always a part of your life. One can easily tell that. And then what I also like that you mentioned was those earlier drafts that you have. I mean, they weren't, you know, like you said, they weren't Narnia, but they were those earlier drafts. And I wonder if a person who's a writer, they've always had that early script out there. Like you said, you had one about the robots because you read a book about Narnia. You wanted to kind of reciprocate that. You wanted to reproduce that. Let's do it differently. Or you talk about the other story that your dad mentioned to you. And so I think, and you can expand on this for me, do you think just as a writer, anyone who says they're a writer, they can't help writing, even from their youngest age to now, they can't help writing? Would you think that's true?
I think, you know, I never like to make generalizations statements say it's true across the board, but I definitely, in my case, and in case of a lot of writers that I've read, you know, memoirs and stuff by, they really, like, you know, there's something kind of like in you, you just gotta do it, and a lot of people, I think, maybe suppress that or say that they're too busy to do it, but really, I mean, when it comes down to it, there's really only one thing that I actually like to do, and hopefully one day I'll be able to make money doing it too, is writing stories. So you know, like I can't really see myself really, really happy doing anything else or not, at least, you know, doing something else and not writing. I can't see myself really enjoying myself that way. So, yeah, I don't know. Like definitely for me, I've always kind of had ideas in my head and people in my head, and you got to kind of get them out.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I agree.
And then the stories I haven't written yet that I don't even know are coming, you know, they're in there somewhere. I'm sure they'll pop out eventually.
I agree. I think writing is a teddy bear that all writers carry with them. I was cleaning out my house, which is a feat in and of itself, and I was cleaning out, and I saw all these notebooks I had, and I found notebooks from, I think, like 98, 96, and they were all full of stories. And I kind of got very emotional about it because I was like, oh my gosh, this has always been with me. I've always had this gift, and I've always wanted to write. And so I always say these things, and I always talk to our guests about them, Timothy, because I want those writers out there. You have this gift. You always have it. It's with you. You carry it with you. If you're at work, you start jotting down a poem. If you're at home, you get an idea. You write the idea that always with you. And so obviously, I think it's a calling. When you say, Timothy, if you have that urge, I think it's a calling.
Yeah, and if it's not a calling, it's definitely a gift, and you know, you gotta use your gifts, and even if you just write for yourself and nobody ever sees it, you know, at least you're kind of exercising that and making it better, and then maybe one day you'll feel good enough about it to kind of come out into the world and everything. But yeah, you've gotta definitely feed that and invest that kind of gift or calling, and see how you can improve it.
And we are just having a fantastic time with Timothy Huguenin. He is the author of the book When the Watcher Shakes, which is available online at Amazon.com. If you want to weigh in and ask a question or make a comment, you certainly can. Call in at 646-668-8485 and press 1 to be live on air. Or hit me on Twitter at ParkerJCole, #RightStuff, with your questions and comments. We're going to go ahead and take a quick short break, and when we come back, more with Timothy Huguenin and When the Watcher Shakes. Stay tuned.
Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guest on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Hi. Is your book club in need of some fresh and exciting questions to ask club members and authors at your next book club meeting? Literations, the book conversation game, is 70 thought-provoking questions to really get into an in-depth discussion about the books you and your club members are reading. These questions really get into the characters, the storyline, and into the author's head. These questions may just give you and your book club members a whole new way to get into a new conversation, a literation. Literations is also a great set of tools for bloggers, interviewers, and authors to use a discussion question. Are you ready to get lit? Please visit our website at litversations.com, LITVERSATION.com. And please like our Facebook page at Simply Said Reading Accessories. Thank you.
Have you read the latest issue of SORMAG Digital, the award-winning literary magazine for multicultural readers and writers? SORMAG Digital is available quarterly and showcases interviews with the best authors in multicultural literature. SORMAG Digital features craft and business articles for those interested in writing. If you're looking for a good book, check out our book reviews on what's hot in multicultural literature. For writers looking for new readers to get in front of, SORMAG Digital is the perfect place to introduce your book. We offer advertising spaces that fit your promotional budget. Get your free subscription on SORMAG.com or order a print issue on MagCloud.com. If you would like more information about SORMAG Digital, check us out on SORMAG.com or contact us at SORMAG@yahoo.com. SORMAG Digital is the magazine for multicultural readers and writers.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You are listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5. I am so glad you're able to join me. We are having a fantastic discussion with my guest co-host and contributor today, Timothy Huguenin. He is the author of the book, When the Watcher Shakes. And Timothy, once again, thank you so much for being with us on the show and just really letting us peel back the veil of who you are, what motivates you, what gets you going, and then having an opportunity to go into your newest release, When the Watcher Shakes. So thanks so much again for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks again to you, too. It's been a lot of fun so far.
What's been really cool, Timothy, is that when you reached out to me, I can't remember if someone recommended the show to you, if you saw it haphazardly, I can't remember it, but I do remember we had a conversation and you said, I write, speculative. You write a little bit scary. And I was like, oh, you're right up my alley, you know.
Yeah.
I remember being like, oh, you have met the right place here. One thing the Right Stuff do is that we do support Christian speculative fiction authors. They're actually on the rise because Christian speculative fiction is on the rise. And so whenever I have a chance to showcase my Christian speculative fiction authors, I certainly do. And so with that in mind, have you found yourself with this speculative fiction novel, do you find yourself an anomaly with some of the people who prefer more the mainstream fiction in Christian publishing? Or do you find yourself, part one of the game? What's your thoughts about that?
I'm still trying to figure that out, I guess. I've gotten to become a lot acquainted with a lot of kind of writers in my kind of area. Like, you had Mark Carver on the show recently, and I've been kind of, Facebooking him a little bit and following him online. And Mike Duran, I don't know if you've read any of his books, but
I know who he is.
He's pretty active too, blogging and stuff, and he's actually been a big help to me. And so I found myself finding more people kind of in that vein that I hadn't really known about before. But yeah, if you just go to like a Christian bookstore or stuff, it's mostly Amish romance and things like that. And it's funny though, because when I was a kid, what probably influenced me a lot is really like kind of mainstream Christian speculative authors like Frank Peretti and Ted Decker, and I always thought they had been really a kind of a big deal. And so now that I've been kind of and honestly I haven't read a lot of Christian fiction in a while, and so when I've kind of come back to this world and everybody's saying, oh, it's all Amish romance and things like that, it's kind of confusing because when I a while ago it was like, full steam ahead with, the scary stuff and thrillers and things, but I guess it's not quite as much now.
What's so interesting is that I remember when I first found out there was a Christian publishing industry. I never knew it existed until about 99, 2000, somewhere about in there. I didn't even know it existed. And I found a store called Family Christian Stores, and I like romance. And so when I saw a lot of the romances, although I did not think about Amish books, but I saw a lot of the romances. I, of course, went nuts. I said, oh my gosh, there's a vehicle for me here. I didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
And so I even tell, when I talk about, some of my writing career, I had no idea I would be a Christian author. I just thought I would have to be a Christian who wrote, or conversely, a Christian writer, however you want to put it. And so when I found out that when our first book came out, Dark Sheriff, it's a horror story, when it came out, I thought I was making a wave into something new. And then I was like, oh, people have been doing it for some time. I just lived on a rock when it happened.
Yeah.
And so you kind of go like, oh, there are other people are doing this. And I told Mark I'm a huge fan of his. He literally is an author whose book I automatically buy just because his name is on it. And I totally understand what you mean. It's like I grew up with Frank Peretti, and when I found Decker, not grew up with Frank Peretti, when I found Peretti and Decker, I was just blown away by that. And then to see like this hush-hush over it, like don't bring out the speculative fiction, just keep it general, keep it safe. And I'm like, but a lot of people don't live in general, and no, people don't live in safe. And so that brings me to my next book, because obviously the books or genres that interest you also influence your writing. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about those books and those genres that you are interested in, and how do they influence your writing?
Yeah, mostly horror is what especially in the last 10 years or so, I've been reading horror. I really got into Stephen King a while back. It's funny because I guess Stephen King was kind of like a taboo in my house, and so I never really got into him, but I read Ted Decker and Peretti and stuff. And then later on, it's like, well, I'll try, everyone reads Stephen King. I'm like, I got to try this guy. And so really I was blown away by he's actually like a much underrated writer in terms of just his ability in his language and stuff, but not all of his stuff is perfect, but he's been kind of a big influence on me. Definitely, like I said, Decker and Peretti, and then but I read almost anything. I mean, I've even read some Nicholas Sparks, so I mean, I'll read almost any genre if it's good, and like that's what's really counts to me is if it's a good writing, I'll probably like it, especially like classic stuff like Hemingway and Flannery O'Connor, and we were talking about West Virginia a little bit, and there's actually this one woman who's from West Virginia, and she writes about West Virginia and a lot of West Virginia history, but I'm probably going to mess up her name, but it's like Denise Giardina or something, but she read one of her books a couple years ago about set during the West Virginia mine wars, and it just really blew me away. She was just fantastic, and I don't even like historical fiction, but she was just so good, and part of that's because I'm West Virginia too, but I mean, she was really good. So yeah, really, like, I'm not super picky, like, you know, I'm not interested in erotica, but I mean, anything else probably is okay. I haven't read any like Amish either, which is no disrespect to people that like that, but it's not my thing either. But almost everything else I'll probably read if it's good.
Yeah, I totally understand you. And when you mentioned about Stephen King, I grew up reading Stephen King. I would hide the books because my mom wouldn't want me to read them, and I knew she wouldn't want me to read them. And so, honest to gosh, I would sometimes have my Bible and then have Stephen King in the middle. Reading it. I was so embarrassed, but that's what I used to do, especially as a kid. And then my mom found out about it. I don't know how she found out. So she took all my Stephen King books away. And then when I started to read romance, I was 14 years old, and I had never read that kind of stuff. And then I got hooked in the romance, and then I was able to find a happy medium with Christian romance that didn't have to be as edgy and graphic as the others that I like. And so that's where I kind of found my medium at. And so I totally understand with you about how the different genres pretty much interest you. You kind of go what interests you, even if that's not your go-to genre. You're open to different ideas. Because I think different ideas also help influence your writing. I mean, some books you read, they're so good with the descriptions that you can smell the sea salt from the ocean, or you can smell the sea rather, and you can smell barbecue, and you can smell and walk around in an old dusty town like in a Louis L'Amour book, and all these kind of things. And so sometimes you get a lot of influence just from reading different genres because different authors have different strengths. Would you say that's kind of what happens to you as you read other books? You kind of just glean some knowledge from their skill.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you always hope that some of that will rub off on you too, just by reading it. But and really, if you think about the best books that there are, I think, in my estimation, like the best books I've read, almost everything, regardless of the genre, has a little bit of every genre in it. It may focus on one primarily, but I mean, if you like, probably my favorite book of all time, or one of them, is George Orwell's 1984, which is dystopian. Kind of a political book, but it's really a love story, and the same with I don't know if you've read Stephen King's 11/22/63. It's when you explain to people, you're like, oh, it's this guy goes back in time to stop JFK assassination, but it's about him living there and finding love and choosing what's important, this life in the past or life in the future, and so really, I think you should be well rounded and kind of branch out, and that's what I try to do more, is because I get stuck on one writer for a while, and then I'll be like, oh, I need to read something else, and so I'll do that, and, I think that helps a lot.
Well, I want to get to the nitty-gritty of our conversation, which is your book, When the Watcher Shakes. It sounds extremely intriguing, so go ahead, tell us, what is When the Watcher Shakes about?
Okay, yeah, it's about, it's basically like a pseudo-Christian cult that's hidden in the mountains of West Virginia. And a side note here, the people in this cult, I wouldn't like read this and be like, oh, these are what West Virginia people are like. The point of the mountains and the isolation is that these are kind of isolated people that aren't like anybody really, and so kind of a drifter wanders. He's kind of hiking through and finds this town, and the cult leader, has some skeletons and doesn't like this outsider come in, and it starts to kind of unravel everything for the people there. And I kind of focused on different perspectives to kind of see how this false religion and legalism kind of affects everybody differently, really. And I wanted to kind of hit that by focusing on multiple perspectives, but there's kind of main characters that I focus on, but it's about that, how this hidden cult basically is found out, and kind of destroys itself from the inside.
What I like about that concept is that, first of all, we are kindred spirits, because in my romance I did make a cult, and I love my cult. My cult is very twisted, and I love it. Yeah. And so I remember when we were talking, how you mentioned about the cult, I was like, yes, me too. I love cults. No, I shouldn't say I love cults, but
yeah.
I love
we love cults.
That dynamic. Well, in a way, the Lord loves us all. We just have to come to him. But, yeah, I love that, the cult thing, because it's very interesting how people isolated and shut up within these walls, like I kind of hinted at before the show, how they're used to keep people out, but are actually keeping people in. And that brings me to another question about your book is, what are some of the things that you explore in When the Watcher Shakes?
I think the main theme I'd say that it's kind of hitting on is legalism and people that use religion for their own gain. And I write this, and I kind of do it a little nervously when I wrote this book. As a Christian, I don't want people to think that I'm writing an anti-Christian book, because the people in this cult would call themselves Christians, but really they're not. It's really anti-Pharisee, because we always read the Gospels and kind of think, well, the Pharisees, we don't ever realize, hey, maybe I'm that, maybe I'm the Pharisee in this. Yeah. And that's kind of what this book is supposed to explore, is like, because I write it, people ask me, like, do you have people in mind when you write these characters? And I'm like, well, to a certain point, there are some people that kind of inspire different things, but really, ultimately, in this book, everybody is me. So, like, even like the really evil dude is me to some extent. And so, this isn't supposed to be anything that would, like, I want to, accuse anybody of. But, like, really, even in Christianity, there's a lot of this kind of thing going on. And so that's kind of what inspired it and what the things that I've experienced. That, and there, like I said, there's a little bit of romance in it, but it's not, super prominent, but it's there and kind of drives some of the characters' actions.
I like how you said, people say, were you inspired by somebody? You should have said, yeah, you were my inspiration for that evil guy in my book. You were the one, Thou shut him up, right? But I really like how you mentioned that actually every character is me. And I totally understand that, because writers have a tendency to release the vulnerability that comes with writing, because there's such a huge, there's vulnerableness out there. Someone can read your book and say, this book was not my cup of tea. And they could be rather scathing in their reviews. And it hurts, because you say, I put so much out here. You know what I mean? I put myself in here, all my fears, all my faults, all my positive notes that I think I have. Everything is in this book, just personify different characters. And then you say, well, this wasn't good. Basically, some writers can say, well, you're talking about me, and that's not necessarily the case, but there's a lot of vulnerability associated with telling our stories. And so we're talking to Timothy Huguenin today. He is the author of the book, When the Watcher Shakes. You can go ahead and get a copy today online at Amazon.com, and go ahead and get a copy, Loving My Brother, today, buy a copy of his book, and please leave a review. We authors need reviews. It makes us live and breathe. We can have our being with reviews, or not really, but go ahead and buy a copy of my brother's book today, and we're going to go ahead and take a quick short break. When we come back, we'll be talking more to Timothy Huguenin and his book, When the Watcher Shakes. Stay tuned.
Don't go anywhere. More with Parker and her guest on the Right Stuff Radio Show. We'll be right back.
Are you a reader looking for more compelling Christian fiction? Maybe something a little more edgy or a bit more real? Are you tired of most Christian fiction shying away from the truth and settling for a rose-tinted view of the world and its issues? Or are you an author who has a compelling story to tell, but you're afraid it doesn't jive with today's brand of Christian or secular fiction? Are you tired of Christian publishers telling you that your content is too edgy? Or maybe you've tried submitting your content under the radar to secular publishers only to be told your themes are a bit too religious? We invite you to take a look at the Crossover Alliance. We are an online publishing company that specializes in edgy Christian speculative fiction with Christian themes and real-world content. Our company is formed from authors and readers just like you who are breaking into the mainstream and Christian markets with this compelling genre. Head over to the www.thecrossoveralliance.com for all the details on who we are, what we do, and what we accept. Right now, if you sign up for our email newsletter, you'll receive a free digital copy of our first short story anthology. Check us out today and help us spread the word about the Crossover Alliance, where light shines brighter in the darkness.
Question: if you write a book, everybody will rush out to buy it. Obvious answer: no. If you were a celebrity or if you had a huge marketing budget, then maybe you can get a lot of exposure for your book. Another solution would be to check out joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com is a promotion and marketing service with access to over 1/3 of a million followers on Twitter. joeytweets.com has 3 packages available to fit any budget. That's joeytweets.com. joeytweets.com. Get some serious exposure for your books.
We're back, and you're hanging out with the queen of Tuesday night, Parker J. and her guests, right here on The Right Stuff.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You are listening to The Right Stuff here on WPJC 104.5, and I am your host, Parker J., the queen of Tuesday nights. And let me tell you, we've been having a wonderful, wonderful time with my guest co-host and contributor today, West Virginian Timothy G. Huguenin. And he has been telling us about his newest book, When the Watcher Shakes. You want to go ahead and get a copy of this book today, right now, hot off the press today. It is available on Amazon.com. And let me tell you, it has been receiving rave reviews from readers. I'm just going to read one of these reviews. It says, "This book exceeded my expectations. I received it in the mail this morning and only put it down twice. I was so intrigued by the suspense and storyline of this novel that I had to finish it. 5 stars. I am looking forward to reading future novels by this author." And that's just one of the many positive reviews When the Watcher Shakes has received. So go ahead and get a copy of When the Watcher Shakes today, again, on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. And Timothy, let me ask you, how does it feel when you hear those kind of comments after who knows how long it took you to write, and people say, "Oh my gosh, this book is great." How does that make you feel as a writer?
Relieved, I guess. I know that, and I know I've talked to other people too, and almost everybody I've talked to have been real positive about it, and kind of surprised. And there's one part of you where people that know you're like, they're really surprised when they read it, and like, "Whoa, this is really good." I'm like, "Well, did you not expect it to be?" But
right.
But and then there's other people I talk to that say, it's really well written. It's not really my style, but I respect kind of what it is and stuff, and that's cool too. It's been great. People have been real positive. It's nice to see that. I'm hoping to get more reviews. So if you're listening, you've read it and you liked it, so give me a review. So. And actually, kind of a cool story about that. I don't know if you know. Trying to remember how to say it. Peter Younghusband. He has a review blog, and I'd gone to him like before the book came out, said, "Hey, can you review my book and everything?" And he said, "I'm too booked up, won't be able to get to it, sorry." And so, but he kind of kept in touch with me, and then when it came out, I released it for free on Kindle for a week, and he got it while it was free, and kind of read the first couple pages out of curiosity, and then just said, "All right, I'm not doing anything else today. I'm going to read this and review it for Tim." So that was really cool. And actually, I've had people that have said that they were really interested in getting my book based off of his review. So I'm really glad he did that. Thanks a lot to him for that. And but everybody else has been real great about it too, and that's really good to hear. I'm glad people are liking it.
That's the nice part, and I love Peter Younghusband. He really does do great reviews, and I remember the reason why he even started his blog, because in his area they don't have a lot of Christian fiction, much less Christian speculative fiction. And now he's over inundated with some of us Christian speculative fiction authors with that. So I love Peter Younghusband. For those of you who want to follow Peter Younghusband's blog, you can go to Christian Speculative Review. I think that's the name of it, Tim. You can go online, just type that in, and you'll get to Peter Younghusband's blog. And so, Tim, you're writing the story, and there's a lot of things that are coming to you. So, when it came to the title, because I find the title extremely intriguing. So, when it came to the title, what made you come up with it? How did that work out? Were you, down in the basement and thought somebody was watching you and something like that? How did it work?
I am not. I actually hate titles, and I try, and really I don't even think about it. Usually, sometimes I'll be, be writing a book or like a short story with a title in mind, but usually I just start with the idea of the story and then write it and see if a title kind of comes out of it. And while I was writing this book, kind of the working title for most of the time I was writing first draft was just called The Community, and then sometime I figured that was really just lame. That's not going to really draw anybody, and so I switched it to When the Watcher Shakes, and I was hoping that would be kind of like intriguing enough because like what does that mean kind of thing, and hopefully that would draw people. But honestly, even releasing it, I wasn't really sure I got the title right, but I had to kind of go with something. So that's what happened, and hope it works. So.
It's funny that you said The Community as a first title, because I read this book. It was supposed to be a horror book back in the day called The Association, and it dealt with, psycho people in a condo association, gated community. And the title sounded more sinister than what the book actually was. So, so I'm glad you changed it to When the Watcher Shakes, because at least that brings a certain image to mind. And so, you're in this book and you're writing this book. What are some of the characters that you really relate to? Like, if we're going to have interviews with these characters, who was the one you really related to, or who did you like the most, or who did you hate to like or like to hate? Tell us about those characters.
That's a good question. Well, and as we kind of talked about before, there's really a little bit of me in everything, but you're right, there's certain ones that I really felt more identified with, and to be honest, I've got I don't want to give too much away, but the person that kind of comes in and finds this place, it's called Abestown, which it used to, like I said, related to the title thing earlier on in the draft. It was just called The Community. So I'm like, I've got to have a better name than that. So I named it Abestown because they have this kind of patriarch they follow named Abe. He's dead, but that's beside the point. So this guy that comes in, John, is not a believer really in anything, and doesn't really know what to believe himself. And in many ways, I identify with that. Just not in that I am atheistic or agnostic or anything, but there's a lot of times that even in my own faith I have questions, and certain kinds of Christians have caused me to really doubt what I believed, and so that was kind of a big driving force, was kind of being able to be that skeptic, that really when you step outside, even we as Christians, even if we're not like the weirdos or anything, if you just take a few steps outside of our world for a minute and look in on it, there's some things we do that you just sort of like, that's what in the world, and that's kind of how this guy thinks of, and so that was kind of a big thing. And then there's also I don't know if I identify with him the most. He's actually he's actually one of the weirdest characters to me. Really had a hard time finding his voice, but I consider him a super important character as Nicholas, and this guy is basically kind of like the most well-meaning guy in the whole place, and really buys into everything, and has good reason to, but then when everything kind of falls down, he realizes maybe he was wrong the whole time, and that's the guy that I think is the most important, because you can easily draw lines and say, here are the good guys and here are the bad guys, and not realize that there are people that really are great people that just are like, totally see things differently and are a little confused maybe,
I think you bring out a good point, because sometimes we do explore our doubts through our characters. It doesn't mean that we're not Christians. It's just that we're weak. We have questions. Things happen. We don't understand why, especially when you go into personal things that you really can't talk about because they are personal. And sometimes you look at other people, you say, why does this person who is obviously XYZ succeeding and I'm doing the best serving the Lord and I'm not getting what I want? And, that's a legitimate question. It's a legitimate concern, and I think it's legitimate to have it. The thing is, I think where we start to fall is when we allow those doubts to get bigger than God, for the lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And I like how you mentioned too about the other character who just believes kind of blindly, and bleeds for it, falls for it, and believes it, because that's not how God wants us to love him either. You know, one of the best verses that got me into apologetics, Timothy, was when I realized the Lord said, love the Lord thy God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, with your mind. So there's a logical aspect to our belief, not just something based off experience or feelings or things like that. And so when you use those characters coming from different angles, like you said in your book, you know, you can explore those things, because you know what, Timothy? Someone who's reading that book could be having the same question. And like you said earlier in the broadcast, storytelling bridges the gap between us. It bridges the gap. It helps us, you know, get really involved. And so I'm glad you took time out to respond to that, because I hope our listeners are out there, especially the writers out there, who say, well, I can't have this because this character doubts too much, or this character is having too many issues with God. Go ahead. I mean, I've always said God has stood up to scrutiny for a while. Okay. He stood up to scrutiny for some time. And so I would say go ahead, use that fictional book to kind of work out your doubts. Not work out your doubts, but go ahead. I don't think anything's wrong with that. And so, you know, I read one of the reviews from the book, but have you received any personal messages or personal comments from people who read your book? How have they responded to it?
Yeah, I've actually, this is kind of one of the coolest things is getting emails from people that, you know, I had no connection to at all, that said they really liked it, and that they thought it was a really important book. And that's, you know, that's the best, because really, you know, you can, I'm not saying that you should never trust your friends, but I mean, they're going to have a kind of a biased view towards it, and even if not, they're going to tell you what you want to hear a lot of times. So it's great getting people that not only have no connection to me and liked it, but like went out of the way to go on my website and found my contact form and email me saying like, hey, this is great, and everything. That means a lot to me.
I hear you. I know exactly what you mean, because they're your family, they're your friends. I don't want to hurt their feelings. And the older or more seasoned, rather, you get as an author, you do want honesty. You say, hey, did you really like this? Did you not like this? What could I have done better? That's why some authors, they need to understand that some critical reviews can help you actually become better. We're not talking to reviews that just say, oh, I didn't like this book because I don't like the author. And there are some of those out there, unfortunately. But I can appreciate what you mean. So it's nice to have that random person that you have no idea who they are say, I really love your work. I remember when that happened for me, Tim, I had a young lady contact me when my book came out, and she read it in a day, and she loved it, and now she's one of my biggest supporters for my work. It just feels really good to have that fan out there. It really does. So I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see where it goes. Yeah. And with that in mind, what are some of your next projects you have in store?
I am working on you know, I get real nervous when I'm trying to write my another novel. I'm trying to hit for a goal of like about 75,000 words. I think When the Watcher Shakes ended up coming around to 60,000, and I wanted to do something a little longer, but I've got this weird problem where like I'll sit down and try to write a short story, and you know, it's really hard to get people to read a short story if it's more than, you know, 3,000 to 5,000 words, and I'll end up doing like an 8,000 word story and after I cut it down. But then I like try to write a novel, and I'm like halfway through being like, is this going to keep going or is it about to die, you know? But I'm working on a novel. It's basically it's just a ghost story right now, set in Canaan Valley, West Virginia, which is where I grew up in. It's not necessarily, at least so far, it hasn't turned out to be anything that's got any like overtly like Christian message or theme. Right now it's just a fun story, and I hope that it turns out well. So,
you know,
but I've got
some
other short stories and stuff too.
That's the one genre I probably can't read is ghost stories, and I'll tell you why. My grandmother freaked me out as a child with her ghost stories and seeing stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, so I could watch a monster movie, no problem. I'm a huge Predator and Alien franchise fan. I love them. I will get excited. I can watch, you know, The Cage, just monster stories. I have no problem watching. But when it comes to ghost stories, I can't. I just can't.
Yeah.
Because, and like, I mean, one time my grandmother freaked me out with some hair-raising story that she had, and I was in my bed staring at the ceiling all night long because I was scared to go to sleep, and that was a couple of years ago. So I definitely can't do the ghost stories. But more power to you, Timothy. And I would love to have you on the show when you do that as well, because one thing you want to do with the right stuff is continue to build a relationship with you, because I would love to see where your career goes. And so if people are listening in, they want to get in contact with you, where can they find you online?
My website is tghuguenin.com, and I know nobody really knows how to spell that, so TG, those are my first two initials, and then Huguenin is HUGUENIN.com, and that's my website. I've got kind of a blog there. I try to blog regularly. I really don't like to blog, but, you got to do it, so I try my best. I've got a Facebook author page, just Timothy G. Huguenin, and I've got Twitter that I try to, stay on there pretty regularly. And my Twitter handle is just at Tim Huguenin. And I've got a mailing list. You can sign up for that if you want more updates. You can just go to my website and you'll find some links there. And I'm on Goodreads too. If you like Goodreads, I'm down with that. So those, as far as I could think, that's pretty much where you could find me.
I was listening to you talk about West Virginia, and West Virginia has a very interesting history. But I would think that the ghost aspect of that would be kind of a really big deal there, wouldn't it?
The what? Can you repeat that?
Like the ghost aspect of West Virginia, all the stories there, haunted places, and stuff like that.
It's a great. I mean, there's so much interesting history here that really lends itself to that. There is actually, I've got it kind of on my list of things to go after. Is I want to do a story or a book about the West Virginia, the Allegheny Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, which is in Weston, West Virginia. There's like a haunted carnival or fair ground or something somewhere in West Virginia. There's like Indian burial grounds. There's like these old prisons with really sketchy pasts and stuff. So there's a lot of good kind of creepy stuff. And I hate it. You want to be like real positive about. I love West Virginia. There's so much great stuff about it, and you don't want to always be like, oh, it's a scary place to go. Don't go there, But there's such great stories there that you can tell. So hopefully I'll be more like, hopefully I won't turn anybody away. But it really is a great place, and I love it. I miss it a lot. And but yeah, there's a lot of great, and it's such kind of I don't know. It's just a great place for many reasons, but that's one of them. Yeah.
I like how you said how there's a sense of connectiveness there in West Virginia that you may not experience elsewhere. And I was thinking about how, we authors, we tend to write about our homes because we love our homes. I remember when I'm doing some research for a historical series I have in mind, and I was looking up all this history about Michigan, and I was like, wow, Michigan has a very interesting history, especially during the Civil War and different things like that. I was like, that's some interesting stuff. And so it makes you feel proud of. So I would say to you, Timothy, use your birthplace as the backdrop and, help use that fictional writing to bridge the gap between stereotypes and reality and between the truth. I think that would be a wonderful thing for you to do. So I'm really glad you're going to take on that call as you hone your work and your writing and reflect that. And so we get to the end of our broadcast. So, Timothy, one thing this show is all about is encouraging authors to write. And I believe there are so many authors out there who have the gift to write and won't pick up the pen to write. God gave them this gift and they're not using it. So I want you, in your own words, in the time, a couple of minutes, encourage those authors out there to pick up the pen and write.
Yeah, Nike has a great slogan. It's just do it, and that's kind of really what we need to respond to in a lot of things. But I think a lot of people will always say, well, I'll write a book someday, but they don't ever kind of sit down and start trying. And even, I think what's really helped me a lot to become a better writer is I started just writing short stories, and that's kind of an easy, not a lot of commitment there, not a lot of risk. You can sit down and say, I'm just going to write a few thousand words and see how it turns out, and that can help you kind of build up your talent, your work ethic, and kind of your courage too to think, I can do something a little longer, or if you don't want to do anything longer, that's cool too. But I think you just got to do it. You just got to sit down and focus. It's like I talk about them all the time, but you just really great writer, and I respect him a lot. Stephen King, in his book on writing, he wrote, people always talk about kind of like having a muse or like being inspired to write, but you just got to sit down and the muse is those like, blue collar guys in the basement. You got to kind of wake them up and kick them and get them going a little bit, like you just got to kind of work on it. But it's worth it, it can be hard work, but you got to do it.
I like how you said that. I thought about Stephen King, too. When he was asked about his writing, he said, what makes you think I had a choice? Probably staring at you very creepily. He makes a good point, though. It's like, that's what I was telling, we were talking earlier. We were telling our listeners out there, if it's always been with you, it's like the teddy bear that you can't let go. And I remember having my stories at work, having it when I went to church, having it when I went to school. I always had it. And so I really want to encourage those listeners out there that you've been holding on to your teddy bear. Let your teddy bear out the box. Go ahead, write, like Tim suggested. Write a short story, because then you're not committed to a huge 100,000-word tome. Just a few 6,000 word short story. Maybe not even that. Some people can write really good stories in under 1,000 words. I can't do it yet, but some people can. So go ahead and pick up the pen to write. And then Timothy Huguenin, thank you so much for being with us on the show today. Really enjoyed having you. Can't wait to have you back on the show real soon with your next work. And thanks for being with me today.
Thanks for letting me on. It's great.
And we were having just a fantastic conversation with Timothy Huguenin. He is the author of the book When the Watcher Shakes. It's available online at Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. Go ahead and get your copy today. Go ahead and leave a review. And if you want to follow Timothy online, you certainly can. You can go to his website, tghuguenin.com. That's tghuguenin.com. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tim Huguenin. That's, again, Huguenin at Twitter. And also type him in on Facebook and follow him there as well. I know he'd love to hear from you. And if you want to sign up for his mailing list, go to his website. You can click on the link to sign up for his mailing list and keep up to date what he has going on. One thing I can appreciate about Timothy is his willingness to talk about his hometown and how much he misses it, and then use that in his writing. I think that's phenomenal when writers do that. And so definitely go ahead and get your copy of When the Watcher Shakes today. You will not be disappointed. It has received rave reviews. Go ahead and find out what all the fuss is about. Thank you so much for joining me for this edition of The Right Stuff. Follow me online at parkerjcole.com. And don't forget to join me Saturday for the Parker J. Cole Show at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, where I talk about issues in, out, and about the church. And join Deborah Lassiter for Dovetails, Sundays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on WPJC 104.5. Thanks again for joining me. I am the queen of Tuesday nights, Parker J., and you have a wonderful, simply glorious, blessed day.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of The Right Stuff. Follow Parker online at parkerjcole.com. To hear this show and other shows, visit the show archive at therightstuffradio.wordpress.com. We'll be back same time next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.